We are live for another episode of SCW Rewind. It is, of course, the place where you can hear all about sumo monster trucks, learn about the debut of the Yeti, and talk about one of WCW's most spoken about pay-per-view. Arguably, it's possibly one of the ones that you probably don't want to remember either. It's Halloween Havoc 1995, and Trick or Treat, I can tell you nice and early, our co-host has had a trick played on him nice and early, the one and only Mr. NXT.
Just a
Welcome
bit
to the house. How are you doing, my friend?
dying, apparently. I mean, to be fair, I watched this show, so do you know what I mean? I already felt like I was losing the will to live after watching it.
I mean, as an overall review of this show, very quickly, I'm guessing you weren't a fan?
It's so... Like I texted you earlier and said the fact that King of the Ring 95 and Halloween Havoc are in the same year, and they're both arguably two of both the company's worst pay-per-views ever. I was just like, it cannot happen in the same year. Surely not. Months apart, it just doesn't seem right. Like this, for me personally, this is a terrible pay-per-view. Like, I watched the first match and I thought, okay, not too bad. And then from 9 afterwards, it just goes down. And I'm like, sure. And like I said, by the end of it, I'm literally texting you going, this show will never end. It just doesn't stop.
It's only 2 hours and 38 minutes as well, and it has a feeling of like a 5 or 8 hour WrestleMania kind of vibe about it. I'm gonna agree with you. Look, the thing is, I'm gonna break it down. If you are into storylines and you're into, let's say, spooky storylines, this was probably up your alley. If you like twists and turns, there's a chance you'll enjoy this show. If you are here for the wrestling and the wrestling alone, switch off now. This is not for you. Although if you wanted two guys complain about it, this is the place to be, because Halloween Havoc 1995 has got some of the biggest wrestle crap you're ever going to see. And for that reason, it's a must-see show. And to go into a bit of the details, like we say, 1995, taking place on October 29th, although apparently the Monster Truck took place on October 28th. Kayfabe is broken. It was taking place in Detroit, Michigan, in the Joe Louis Arena. Attendance was 13,000 in the house. I saw a few empty seats, and the tagline for the show is "There's nowhere to hide," and literally that is quite the case when you're sitting on the sofa watching it. Although you could argue there's nowhere to hide, but then we wouldn't be very good at reviewing it. But on commentary is Tony Schiavone and Bobby Heenan. For me, I always enjoy listening to them on commentary, regardless of what's happening on the show.
Yes, but after the infamous Monster Truck match, Bobby Heenan becomes insufferable. And honestly, I was like, this is the point where I'm like, this show needs to end now. But you're right. Otherwise, those two really are normally a really good commentary team. But 2 hours in, and I'm like, yeah, this needs to end now.
I mean, to be fair, I'm actually on Bobby Heenan's side because obviously, just to break it down, so we have a sumo monster truck. It's as wacky and horrible as it sounds. It's on the roof somewhere. Hogan and the Giant in monster trucks. The Giant loses in the sumo match. So obviously, the truck goes out of the circle. So that's basically the rules. There's a massive circle. You have to get one truck out of the circle. That determines the winner. The end of it, the Giant's the one out of it. He comes out. He goes after Hogan. They're near the edge of the roof of this place. And it looks like that the Giant wants to throw Hogan over. But instead, Hogan counters it. And rather than kind of throwing the Giant off, the Giant just kind of falls backwards. And that leads to massive chaos of what's happened to the Giant. Because obviously, one side is the street. The other side is the river. So people are kind of a bit like, oh, what's going to happen? Don't worry. The Giant was fine. He was back for the main event and seemed unscathed. So, yeah, kayfabe there for you. But it's kind of like Money in the Bank 2020 for those modern fans when Baron Corbin decided to murder Aleister Black and Rey Mysterio just for them to come back a very short time afterwards. But yeah, bringing it back into that context there, obviously you mentioned Bobby Heenan, kind of insufferable, but I think he was true because he said Tony Schiavone didn't care. Tony Schiavone seemed like he didn't give a two S words of the fact that the Giant may not be back for the main event, but it is what it is. But look, let's dive into the show. Obviously, we've kind of explained the monster truck, really. We might as well finish the monster truck bit off, really, because then we don't have to go into, we can just talk about matches. First off, boring as, I mean, it's about 6 minutes of just watching monster trucks go backwards and forwards, and you can see they're pretty much tied together as well.
Yeah, it's utter garbage. It's 6 minutes of my life that I'm sure I'll never get back. If like even the fact that the build to it and they have someone with a spot welder come in and weld the two monster trucks together, I would be really concerned if that was that guy's job, because that was not a very convincing job that he did itself. And then yeah, it's just bad, man. This is such a Bischoff idea. Like, I sat there and thought about this, and I was like, you know what? Bischoff's the guy that loves like motorcycles and going to pay-per-views on garbage trucks, and I was like, this has got Bischoff written all over it.
Absolutely, it does feel like one of his ideas, and to be honest, it's not a good one. I can't see them doing this again ever after this, because I mean, I don't think they did, to be honest. They come up with some different wacky ideas in WCW. Don't worry, we'll get to those another day. But yeah, this was a one and done, thankfully, for this. But yeah, crazy stuff indeed, and it almost ruined the kayfabe for me as well, because I felt like every time I saw Hogan, he was kind of smiling or laughing every time the camera panned on him during the filming. It's like, Hogan, you're supposed to be a bit fearful for your life in this monster truck, and to be fair, the Giant is bigger, therefore you would imagine that he would be able to slam on the brake or on the accelerator harder. Therefore, in theory, he should have probably won this. But what do I know? I've not been in a Sumo monster truck match myself.
No, and the thing was as well is there was no stipulation to it. It was just a case of Hogan was like, I can build a bigger monster truck than you can, and it was like, all right, fair enough. Like, not a case of, oh, if I win, we're gonna have this kind of match, or if you win, we're gonna have that kind of match. It was nothing, man. And yeah, I mean, who's the worst come out of it? Hogan, because his motorbike got run over by the Big Show or the Giant a couple of weeks earlier, or whatever it was. Like, just really irrelevant. Like, match rating dud. Like, it's not even a match, but I still rate it as dud.
Dave Meltzer didn't rate this at all, therefore I wouldn't rate it either. But if I had to rate it something, I mean, I'm going in the minus territory, because it is like time standstill. If you ever have the opportunity, just skip until like literally the truck goes over the line, and then watch the rest of it. It's still wrestle grab. All of it is wrestle grab. It's grade A wrestle grab. It is the definition of wrestle grab. But go and spare yourself the first 5 minutes of when it starts. Anyway, let's get into the show then, and we'll go chronological from the rest of this then. Obviously, just to mention, there is an intro, and of course, two demons have emerged with Hogan and the Giant. Obviously, you mentioned about the motorcycle smashing, back cracking, neck twisting Giant, who of course did destroy Hogan's motorcycle, like you mentioned, with the monster truck as well. Hogan's gone to the dark side. Of course, he's wearing black. Of course, he's going against the Dungeon of Doom, which of course that's who the Giant represents as well. And also there is then mention when we get through the end of the video package that we see, like, it's those monster trucks are in the car park waiting as well. But going into it, it's short and sweet, the WCW style, but I always feel it's a bit sort of cartoony, kind of goofy like as well with their video intro packages. And did you feel like with this, with Halloween Havoc in particular?
The whole thing, everything that involved a video package, I thought was, I wouldn't say cheap. It just felt very WCW. Like, it just felt like the quality you would get, and it didn't really so much feel like a wrestling show. It genuinely felt like a cornball horror film that I was having to watch when it come to this stuff and the stories they were trying to project out with these video packages. But yeah, man, it is what it is. It's 95. It's WCW. I mean, look, you have to sit through I dread to imagine what quality the camera quality is in 95. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's all grainy footage. So, but yeah, like, you sit there and they show like the monster trucks on the roof, and you're like, logically, why would you put monster trucks on the roof of a building anyway? Because it just doesn't make sense, does it? Like, if there's meant to be people underneath that roof, that's surely like a health code violation or something. It's stupid, man. It's crazy. It's WCW in 1995.
I'm going to go with hokey. That's the word I'm going to go to use to describe the whole thing. But like you say, it's 1995. I think that's probably a bit, I don't want to say risque for the time periods. I mean, we're talking nearly 30 years ago. When you go 40 years ago, the things like Nightmare on Elm Street and stuff like that, I feel that's got a bit of a hokiness about that sort of horror movie as well. So I'm gonna put the connection there with those two together. But hey, we speak then to Bobby Heenan and Tony Schiavone. You mentioned that Flying Brian and Arn Anderson have attacked Ric Flair before the show, leaving the tag team match with Sting and Ric Flair against Arn Anderson and Flying Brian in doubt for later in the show. But we'll come on to that later in the show. I think that's probably the best thing to do. Instead, we're going to talk about NXT's favorite match of the night, because he's already told us that was the one. So let's do it. It was the opening match. It was Johnny B. Bad against Diamond Dallas Page for the WCW Television Championship. Now, of course, basically, it's a trick or treat moment, if you want, really, with Johnny B. Bad's entrance, because someone's dressed up as him coming to ring while Page is already in the ring, and obviously Bad just comes over through the crowd, over the barricade, straight into the ring, and just punches Page to start things off. They fight through the crowd and back as well. Page gets a bucket on his head and gets thrown into the ring post, but DDP takes control. He drops Johnny B. Bad's head first onto the turnbuckle, and then he sort of lands his move, the pancake, for a 2 count, which is kind of like you put into a Styles Clash, but without
pole driver or Styles Clash.
Yes, it's sort of a mix in between. What do you think of the pancake? I've not really seen that sort of move done for a very long time.
I thought everything was fine apart from the name. I thought the name was garbage. Apart from that, it was all good, man.
I just got hungry, if I'm brutally honest. But anyway, someone give me some Nutella. But anyway, yeah, many rest holds from on Johnny B. Bad then until he gets back into the match using the back suplex. During the beatdowns as well to Johnny B. Bad, DDP has 2 people with him at ringside, which of course is Max Muscle and of course his wife Kimberly, of course, who's known as the Diamond Doll. And he wanted to have his moves rated as the match went along, so she begrudgingly held up the score of 10. But at that point, once the roles were reversed, obviously secretly, I think she wants Diamond Dallas Page to lose because Bad gets back into the action. She happily gives the score of 10 immediately. But Johnny hits his bad day for a 2 count, and that's when we see Max Muscle hold Johnny B. Bad. DDP misses his punch, but he doesn't hit Max either. Instead, he gets drop kicked Diamond Dallas Page into Max, taking him off the ring apron, rolled up by Johnny B. Bad for a 2 count. And then that point, we see Johnny B. Bad tussle with Max Muscle on the floor. Bad gets back into the ring, is held then by DDP. Muscle goes for a clothesline, but hits Diamond Dallas Page, and Bad then hits Max with an interesting looking shot to the floor, and then he actually pins Diamond Dallas Page to crown a new television champion. You're a fan of this opener, so I'd like you to kick it off.
Dude, the fact that I saw DDP as a heel was interesting because it's very rarely that I see DDP portray a heel character. Johnny B. Bad, it was, in my opinion, kind of like WCW's version of the Honky Tonk Man. So my initial thoughts were the roles were reversed and Johnny B. Bad was meant to be the bad guy, but lo and behold, it's not that way. But I thought the match in general, it was the only one that was constructed well. It was the only one that had a real story throughout, like in terms of like you had the build, the video package before as to why Johnny B. Bad was fighting DDP for this title, and I just thought, like, as in general, the time they got, the quality they delivered, I just thought it was a really good wrestling match. Like, the best match on the card in terms of everything else, because everything else was either garbage or too short, like in most cases. But, yeah, so I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I thought, oh, this show can't be that bad if we're starting off this good. And like I sit and think about it now, and I've probably given this too high of a rating, but I just, like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, don't get me wrong, DDP's selling was kind of comically like how Shawn was with Hogan that one time, like in certain cases. But otherwise, dude, I thought it was great. And like I said, seeing DDP as a heel was the biggest thing for me because, like I said, it's not very often he's portrayed as a heel in this, like in WCW.
Yeah, he's more portrayed as heel in his early years. I think he sort of kicks in the year 1990. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure, in the comments at some point. But those first 4 or 5 years when he gets his spells where he gets a chance to break through. And it's only really like, I think, late 94, 95 that he sort of starts kicking into where he can actually get himself onto pay-per-view properly in championship programs as well. It was always very like curtain jerk if he was in those first few years, but it was always a heel then. But then he sort of burst into becoming a babyface. I think 96 he still remains heel, but 97, of course, that famous show, which I believe is at potentially in Atlanta, Georgia, where he has a chance to join the NWO and he turns on Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. That's the moment it's the big baby face turn. He never really looks back. I think it's like 1999 the next time he goes heel. So, but yeah, DDP, like you say, it's for someone that remembers WCW, always remembers the People's Champion DDP, remembers the babyface, remembers the variations of the Diamond Cut, almost pre-Randy Orton with the way that movies dropped. But to go back and see what DDP was like as a heel, this is probably the best representation of it, and it certainly is a fun throwback for those that haven't seen much of that work. As for Johnny B. Bad, yeah, I mean, for me, a character that I think when he first started, I think was a bit misunderstood with WCW, but certainly as he went along, like you say, he sort of got into to himself of being a good babyface and a babyface champion in the company when he was there. Obviously, he does go on to say after this match that I'm here for the long term as champion. I'm going to give everything I got. I believe he's in WWE within 6 months, so I don't think that lasted very long. He does not even TV champion for that long either. He does drop the championship, I believe, in November. I want to say, which could be to Lex Luger, but I might need Wikipedia to confirm that for me. But yeah, all in all, I'm going to say for me, I agree with you to a point. This match is a decent opener, but my issue with it is that I think the match is too long. It's funny how we're going to say a lot of the match is too short. I think this match is too long, and I think particularly when DDP is on top, it's just rest hold after rest hold after rest hold, and after so long, I find myself starting to rest, and that's when I start to get a little bit impatient, a little bit bored, and maybe just peeked onto X for a minute or two. So for me, I sort of go, you lost me for a little while, so I have to take the end critique. But all in all, I think if there would have been a bit more variation from DDP in the offense, and I understand, I will be told immediately, like, this is what you did back in the 90s. You drew the heat from the move. You don't have to put too much on your body as well. Totally get all of that. However, for me as the viewer, in 2024 anyway, it's not as exciting as it was in 1995. So for me, for that reason, I will critique it. But otherwise, really enjoyed the start. I really enjoyed the finish. I like the use of the Diamond Doll. For me, I think that all in all, there is some positives to take out of the match. So it'd be interesting to see how we compare that star rating.
Yeah, I mean, my probably only critique that I would have had is that, well, not even necessarily a critique, is the fact that Johnny B. Bad doesn't win the match off his own back. Like, everything he does doesn't get the pinfall. It's done via heel interference, and it's obviously, it's Max Muscle. That's such a 90s name as well. It's their interference that ultimately costs them, and I suppose I can take that as a case of it's a good way to keep the heels strong because it's their own undoing. But like I said, if you're going to put this title on Johnny B. Bad, and the fact that he's won it, a match with, like I said, without doing anything himself to actually earn it, I don't know, maybe it kind of weakens the champion. Maybe there's a reason why he lost it a month later. Who knows?
Maybe indeed. Maybe the call from WWF may have been something that could have had something to do with it. Maybe the contract was coming up. But we didn't really go into much. We did get some information, by the way, before the match of how this was put together, by the way. So just quickly go through that very, very quickly because I did skip that little bit of detail. This match was done because of the fact Johnny B. Bad was supposed to have a United States Championship match against Sting. He didn't make it to the arena, to the building for Saturday night to have that match. He actually turned up at the end of the night. And the reason that happened was because a tire was taken out. And Mean Gene said, well, can you be bothered to ring us or something? He said, I didn't have a phone. I couldn't ring you. I couldn't contact anybody. It's been a nightmare to try and get here. DDP got in the camera, gloated the idea of, look, you missed the opportunity. And people like me should have had this championship chance, not you. Mean Gene reminds him Johnny B. Bad actually earned the opportunity, unlike DDP, who was TV champion at the time. And then, of course, that's when Max Muscle got involved. Went, yeah. Can you imagine having to try and drive with 4 flat tires? And Johnny B. Bad then went, 4 flat tires? Well, I only said about 1. And obviously knew then it was DDP and Max Muscle who'd done it. So, of course, he clobbered Diamond Dallas Page. I thought it was actually a fun backstage segment that they showed before the match. And I thought it really gave a bit of detail to go into the match as well. Of like, oh, this is an exciting reason to go and see it. You don't get that so much else in the show, which I think for a WCW viewer around that time period could have really done with, because I think that I've seen everything WCW wise. However, my brain needed to trigger a couple of moments that happened on the build up to the show that were not fed to us throughout the show, especially with the Taskmaster stuff and the Hogan stuff and that. Like, it's very brief what they tell. They could have given probably a bit more detail with other bits and bobs going on, especially as well with Savage and Luger.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I mean, obviously, they obviously didn't know that the WWE Network was going to be a thing, and I presume that if anyone's going to buy it, it was a case of VH tapes or later on DVDs and whatever. And it's kind of like, I don't think retro reviews wherever in WCWIs when they were putting this together. But like I said, I'm exactly the same as you. I went into this like I don't know everything about WCW, but this was like one of only 2 matches that I had a story or a reason why this match was going on. So do you know what I mean? That in itself scores an extra quarter of a point for me.
Absolutely. Let's go with that star rating then. I think people we want to eagerly know what that star rating is for this match.
3 stars for me.
3-star rating. That's a decent rating. I'm going with 2.5. If you literally just cut a little bit the filler out in the middle, I think I would have joined you in the 3. But I can confirm, because we like to share Dave Meltzer ratings as well with this. So if you are interested to know, this is the place for you. Dave has given this 3 stars, just like yourself, NXT. So he shares your opinion with this WCW TV Championship match.
That's where the comparison ends tonight for me and Dave.
I'm sure. Let's wait and see, because the second match on this show is Randy Savage versus the Zodiac. The Zodiac, of course, is Brutus the Barber Beefcake, for those keeping score at home. He's part of the Dungeon of Doom, which, of course, is one of the worst stables, in my opinion, in wrestling history. But still, we're going to go with the hokiness and the fun that is the Dungeon of Doom and play to its strengths throughout this stream. But funnily enough as well, the Zodiac has Rey Mysterio's WCW music. I'm sure that's an add-on. I don't remember listening to that a few years ago when I first watched the show. However, to go into the detail of the match, Savage attacks Zodiac from behind, face on heel. Why not? Fan tries to get into the ring, which, let's be fair, this is not their fault. Obviously not planned of the show. So they've had to fight on the outside while the fan is dealt with by security. Once they get back into the ring, Zodiac misses a splash, and Savage hits an elbow from the top rope to get a win. And just to give you a bit of detail, I mean, the first match of this show was 17 minutes and 1 second. This second match was 1 minute and 30 seconds. But there is a little caveat to this as well, is that if Randy Savage won this match and later in the night Lex Luger won his match against Meng, they got to face each other in the sub-main event. So in other words, Savage gets his job quickly and can move on to hopefully facing Luger feeling fully fresh. I've probably spent more time describing this match than how long it actually took. But your thoughts of Savage versus the Zodiac?
The fact the fan that jumped the barrier got a bigger cheer out of it than the wrestlers did in this match pretty much sums it up. And I think that the highlight package they show afterwards shows the best part, Macho Man's entrance. The fact that they put Macho Man's entrance in the video replay at the end just shows how short and sweet that this match is. This is dud. It absolutely stinks. I get that. Why didn't they just do Luger versus Macho Man? Why do we have to have these qualifiers? Do you know what I mean? You could have given this time easily to someone else. It was stupid, man.
It is stupid in hindsight, to be fair. Look, what I will say is positively, because I said I'll try and keep it positive, I would not have been excited to see this match go on for 15 minutes like the last match. So the fact that it's 1 minute 30, we're not going to waste any time. And this actually originally, and this is something obviously I don't think you would know, but originally this was supposed to be Randy Savage versus Kamala, who also was part of the Dungeon of the Doom. But Kamala allegedly refused to do the job and I think walked out the company. So the Zodiac took his place. So
I don't blame him. Why would you?
But there's no shame losing to Randy Savage.
In 90 seconds, there is. That's the joke. He's like, I don't even remember Zodiac getting any offense in. He does one failed splash, and I think that's pretty much it. And it's like Kamala was expected to do the exact same.
Think how long it took to do the Zodiac's face paint, and he was out there for 90 seconds. Never mind.
Exactly.
Your star rating for this match, I think you've already said it.
0. Yeah.
Yeah, dud. But to be fair, I don't blame all of it on them. Creative gives the time. The fan ruins it as well. But to give Dave Meltzer's rating, guess what he said? Dud. You're 2 for 2.
Oh. It's a Christmas miracle. Wrong season yet, but it's a Christmas miracle.
Absolutely, indeed. Well, we're going to move on next then to the Road Warrior Hawk versus Kurasawa. Of course, is with Colt Palmer as well. Colonel Parker is the manager, and of course, so there's a video package for this as well. Kurasawa actually yanks back on the arm of Hawk during the August Clash of the Champions. That injures Hawk, which leads to set up for the rematch here. And basically, Hawk is on offense for the majority of the match. He ends up clotheslining Colonel Parker on the floor, but then he's kind of distracted, or I don't even really, Kurasawa basically gets a couple of offenses in. The second move is the fall away slam. He goes to put his foot on the rope for the pin, which the Colonel then holds the foot on that rope to give extra leverage. And yes, Kurasawa defeats Road Warrior Hawk in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. Your thoughts of Hawk versus Kurasawa?
The video package was probably longer than the match itself. Another dud, mate. It's just like 3 matches in, and I'm like, okay, this has gone from okay to what the hell, like instantly. This is horrific.
This is, I mean, to be fair, I mean, Hawk is the moves are landed quite well. I'll give it that, I suppose. But there's no time to tell a story. It feels almost as if we've got an overrun, or this match was booked for pay-per-view, and we got here and went, oh, we don't really have time for this one. Sorry, guys. We're just going to rush through it. I don't know what else is the thought process with it here, but Kurasawa had a lengthy match with Randy Savage the previous Nitro, which he almost beat Savage. So they tried to really build him up. They got to the show here, and he had to cheat to win to beat Hawk, who, to be fair, was not being booked strong at this point in WCW. So it's a bit of questionable booking, to say the very, very least, but perhaps the least said the better. Kurasawa didn't last long in WCW, was gone by 1996, so worth it. Your star rating for this match?
Dud.
3 minutes and 15 seconds, and I have given it the same as Dave Meltzer. As looking at his rating, I've gone for a 1 star. Both showed up for work, and yeah, the moves were at least executed fine. There wasn't a botch or some fan jumping in the ring, so I've gone with a 1.
It's fair enough, but it's like how am I supposed to enjoy a match like? Yeah, I basically blinked and this was over, and I'm like, I don't understand how this is supposed to be. Like, people paid money to watch this. Like, if I was a ticket-paying fan, I'd have been really annoyed at this.
Yeah, I would have been as well, because you just think, like, they waste so many time in different areas on this show as well. Like, there's so many interviews, there's backstage things. We've already gone through the monster trucks. It's just like there's stuff on this where you think, I would personally wouldn't have myself, but hey, this is the way they've chose to go with it. But Mean Genius with Randy Savage backstage, and we're talking about questionable moments in the show. Basically, Savage had 1 down, 1 to go, and he potential face Luger later in the night. And he says that he can beat Hogan if he wants to get the opportunity to face him. And then he gets into basically a war with Mean Gene over facial hair, saying that Mean Gene's moustache is crooked, and then Mean Gene sort of bit back. He didn't seem to like that one, did he? He really did become Mean Gene, to be fair.
Dude, I was like, what is Macho Man on? Like, seriously, like, honestly, the most weird. Like, I know Ultimate Warrior is famous for like crazy backstage segments, but Macho Man was just like on something. I was like, what's Mean Gene done to get cussed out for his facial hair? But hey, do you know what? Good on Mean Gene for sticking up for himself.
Absolutely. I felt myself like, yeah, you go, Mean Gene. He's always given the hotline very well. So I mean, I don't know where it came from with the Sasha's crooked, but Bobby Heenan, one of the best lines of the night, said that actually a nose and glasses came with that tash as well when we went back to ringside, which was a very nice line. So yeah, shout out to Bobby Heenan for that. But then we go to our next match, and this one's too short as well, but at least it's one of my more favored matches of the night. It is Sabu versus JL. JL, of course, is a masked luchador, and for those wondering who is under the mask of JL, I can, spoiler alert, give the name now. It is Jerry Lynn, who is under there, of course, former ECW world champion, of course, now as a trainer in All Elite Wrestling. Yeah, I mean, basically, let's go into the details of this match, because it's just high flying, basically, for the few minutes they get. Springboard moonsault taking out both JL and Sabu is with the original Sheik coming to ringside, who also gets taken out with that springboard moonsault to the floor. And Sabu then sent flying across the floor before JL jumps off the top rope to land on Sabu with a crossbody to the floor. Sabu lands a springboard senton over the top rope, followed by a victory roll from the top rope as well. I thought it was really impressive, that victory roll from the top rope. And then using the top rope, Sabu uses his legs to hit a moonsault on JL to pick up the victory. And just as the 3 count is hit, the original Sheik decides to land a fireball in the face of Jerry Lynn. Thanks for coming, Jerry Lynn. Your thoughts then of this match, which lasted, I'll give you a grand total of 3 minutes and 25 seconds.
I think Sabu constantly lives in a state of floor is lava, because that guy just lives on the top rope, apparently. I thoroughly enjoyed it for what we got. Problem was, didn't get enough of it. like you said, 3 minutes long, and the match is over, and hey, we're moving on to the next one. I was like, when it starts, and I'm like, oh, okay, we could be on for a really, really good match here. Oh no, wait, 3 down's over, and I'm like, okay, sure, next match, move on.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, it's too short, and I think these two literally went right. We've got 3.5 minutes to work with. Let's throw all of our big spots in this time. So it's actually a really pleasing watch, but it's just not long enough to tell a proper story of what you could get out of it. So I think for me, that's my critique with the match. However, I did enjoy it. I'm going to give it a 2.75 star rating because despite the fact that they had minimal time, I think that they crammed in everything they could for it in that time. And I think they deserve a bit of plaudit for it.
I gave it a 1. I liked what they did, but do you know what I mean? Without having like, you know, some time, for example, how can I enjoy it, man? Like I said, dude, I can go like, do you know what I mean? I can turn on like, it's like essentially, do you know what this was? This was a YouTube highlight clip. It's what you can do now. You go on YouTube, you can just literally you can find that and you can watch this whole match in 3 minutes, and it's any YouTube highlight clip now you get.
Yeah, do you know what? That's a really good comparison for the match. It is like a highlight reel put together in one. And I mean, the thing is that I'm going to say, just as a last supporting argument for these two, they actually can wrestle, which I think with a number of matches felt like at least one of the two couldn't wrestle. And a lot of the matches that we had here, or they were past their prime. These are two young or hungry wrestlers here that actually can execute the moves pretty darn well. So for that reason, I will stick with the star rating. But let's go see what Big Dave Meltzer has rated this match. 2.5. He's gone with 2.5 for this one. So there you go. But this is the last of the very, very short matches. We will go into a match that will be longer very shortly, and we're going to wish that that match actually wasn't as long. But we got first off the Dungeon of the Doom with the Master and the Taskmaster, which is really more wrestle crap and really spooky bollocks. There will be a total eclipse when the Giant and the Yeti end Hulkamania. Hogan, when you put on the black, the evil is coming out of you, and Hogan, you don't have any friends. Sting, Luger, and Savage are all on your heels. And then we see Hulk Hogan presenting Maniac Mike with a Harley Davidson bike. If you talk about wasting time on a show which could be given more time to Sabu versus JL, this is particularly a moment. The last two segments are a moment which proven that Sabu versus JL should have at least got 10 minutes.
The Dungeon of Doom actually were getting booed by the in-house crowd. That sums it up. If you're getting booed by the in-house crowd because the promo was garbage, like, why was this even a thing? And yeah, dude, I skip forward. Like, I don't care that someone's won a motorbike. Like, again, this is another Bischoff thing. This is such a pre-show thing now, like something that WWE would do on the kickoff show. I don't understand what the point of it was. Like, oh, what are we supposed to come to these shows because there's a chance of winning a Harley Davidson motorcycle? Do you know what I mean? I don't know. It might have been more appropriate for the time, but again, like you just said, it's taken away from a Jerry Lynn Sabu match. So what was the point?
Yeah, it just seems very, very silly indeed. And you know what was very silly? Lex Luger versus Meng. First off, before we even get into any details of the match, because Meng was accompanied by the Taskmaster Kevin Sullivan, this match is always a good match to have on a Nitro. It's a good match to have on a Thunder. Thunder wasn't around in 95, but a WCW Saturday night, it's not a pay-per-view match. I'm very sorry. This is going to burst some bubbles. It's not a pay-per-view match, and I'm going to tell you why in a couple of minutes, because, well, actually a couple of seconds. The wrestling is awful. It is terrible from start to finish. But thankfully, I have something I can tell you other than the finish. Is this match is actually a little bit story driven. At least there's a story to give you about this match. It's not going to make the result any better, but still, I've got something to work with. So basically, Kevin Sullivan wants Lex Luger to be in the Dungeon of Doom. For that reason, when Meng was in control of this match, he chose not to interfere. If Luger was in control, if Meng was in control, he stayed there on the outside, not touching Luger. But he would talk to Luger when Luger was out of it on the floor. He would stop Meng from coming to the floor to continue the attacks. Sullivan, like I said, tried to communicate on a couple of different occasions, but Luger would eventually make that comeback until Meng actually cheats by using a golden spike. At this point, it looks like Meng is actually going to win the match, but Sullivan wants the match between Randy Savage and Lex Luger. Therefore, he gets into the ring and he breaks up the pinfall, but not by kicking Meng, by kicking Lex Luger. Therefore, Lex Luger wins the match by disqualification. Oh dear, NX Steve. this match as well went, just so we can put it in perspective, we said a good match, Sabu versus Geraldine, 3 minutes 25. This match, 13 minutes and 14 seconds of absolute torture. And I'm not talking about the rack.
Dude, like you said, it's a perfect TV match. This, the fact it's on a pay-per-view is shocking enough in itself. Yeah, it's not great. I mean, at least they got time, I suppose, is the one plus I can take out of it. But, like, I must have missed that story beat with Kevin Sullivan wanting Luger to join, because the ending to me made no bloody sense. And I was like, why is he just randomly, like, DQ'd him for some reason? Like, I must have missed that story beat. But, yeah, dude, it's not good. Like, this show is literally going from bad to worse.
Yeah, I mean, now matches are getting time and they're not good. Doesn't help things here. And yeah, like the fans just were really calm and quiet, felt throughout a lot of the match as well. And yeah, I mean, commentary tried to help with the story a little bit. And obviously, Sullivan says after the match, because Ming's like, "What you doing?" He's like, "Savage. We want him to face Savage." That I think that was the moment where kind of like he made that point there. But other than that, God help me. This match, dud. I'm tempted to go lower than a dud. It's quite bad.
I gave it a 1. Like, it wasn't. I didn't think it was that bad. At least they got that said. They, for the time they had, they put on some kind of match. But yeah, I went with a 1.
Should we see what Dave's got to say?
Go for it.
-1 star.
Shut up. Really?
Yeah.
It can't be that bad. I must have missed something, because I just genuinely thought it was like a really poor TV quality match. Don't make me go and watch Meng versus Lex Luger again, man. I can't think it was that bad.
That's what he said. I mean, I've gone with dud. I mean, for me, I found it very boring. It long dragged out. I understand the story beat part of it. Fair enough with that. But I mean, the finish is just, it's unapologetic. And the thing is, it makes Lex Luger look so weak. That's the problem for me. Like, Luger should be getting through Ming. Every other match they ever have in WCW ends up in the torture rack, ends up with the forearm. Luger ends up winning. Why they just couldn't do that here and just keep the suspense of disbelief a bit longer. Yes, Sullivan wants to show he's helping. Maybe they could have done it in a different way so that Luger then still goes on to win the match. But just this way just really didn't help anyone. It protects Ming, but it's a stupid booking decision all around. No, not a fan at all.
Not good. It's not good, man. But like I said, I think -1 is really harsh for some of the stuff that we've just had. Like, the fact that these guys got time, and like I said, if you're giving, like if he's giving like a dud or whatever to Road Warrior Hawk versus Kurasawa or whatever, like, I just think that's a bit of a, I don't know. It seems kind of weird to me. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a strange one to say the very least. But hey, that's where we go with that one. But yeah, we get there. Mean Gene with the Giant. The Giant said he would send Hogan off the roof in the monster truck, foreseeing what he was going to try and do later. And he said, if there's anything left of him, he'll get the WCW title later. But moving on then to the next match, then in the meantime, we'll be talking about Sting and Ric Flair versus Arn Anderson and Flyin Brian Pillman. So basically, with this match, we mentioned earlier in the show, so Ric Flair had been attacked. Therefore, he was not going to be able to come out at the start of the match. It was Arn Anderson, it was Flyin Brian, and they were taking on Sting on his own. So it was 2-on-1 to start off with. But funnily enough, you'd think Sting at the disadvantage would get the beatdown. Instead, Sting was on top. Sting was actually the guy that was actually getting quite well at a bit of the offense. One of my favorite moves that Sting did actually in the match as well, Brian Pillman, was actually on the second turnbuckle on the outside. It was actually launched off to go straight into the barricade, which I thought was a fun little spot. But eventually, the heels do get the advantage. Arn Anderson uses Sting's head to go straight into his tag team partner's head. Classic Anderson move and a 4 horseman move from the past to make sure any means necessary you end up on top. You put your bodies on the line. And from that point, Ric Flair does come to ringside. He's got the bandage on the head. He's trying to get past the referee to get into the action. He has to wait impatiently on the corner, although, of course, he's strutting and profiling to get the fans on side. But what then plays out is a bit of a lengthy beatdown. But for me, it's a good lengthy beatdown because, well, Arn Anderson and Flyin Brian are punishing Sting to the point that you just want to see that hot tag so much. You're building, and eventually Sting finds a way to get to the corner. That hot tag is made. But they were saying that Ric Flair had been a bit calm on that corner for a little while, but the hot tag still was made. Ric Flair come in, and just when he was about to attack Arn Anderson, turns and attacks Sting. That's right. It is a double cross, ladies and gentlemen, done to its finest. Disqualification is called for at this point. So Sting and Ric Flair technically win the match, but we get the reformation of the Four Horsemen. And of course, at this point, just for a bit of context for people previously, and then Steve, you might welcome some of this information as well. Flair and Anderson were teaming in the summer of 1995. However, they'd lost at Clash of the Champions, and at that point, they were basically turned against each other, really. Arn Anderson thought Flair had gone soft, so they had a couple of matches. They had one at Full Brawl, which Anderson actually won thanks to the help of Flyin Brian Pillman, but actually they managed to convince Ric Flair to get on board with this, and yeah, it turned out that Sting was the one that was double-crossed, and Sting had said, because he didn't trust Ric Flair, he said, if you did this to me, I'd leave you for dead. Well, you knew what the feud was going to come after this. It would be Sting and Flair once again. But I'll tell you what, for me, I enjoyed the swerve. I thought it was fun. I enjoyed the build up to the hot tag. It's a shame that it didn't fulfill for the fans, but at the same time, a television angle on pay-per-view, I suppose, will have a mixed review, I guess.
Yeah, for me, the biggest problem I had was that hot tag took way too long. Like, dude, it was like, honestly, there's only so much I can watch Pillman and Anderson beat down on Sting for before ultimately, because I knew what the angle coming was, and it was like, I can understand the anticipation of trying to build it, but for me it was like it went on like 5 minutes too long, in my opinion. Like, I think it does really good to make Sting look strong, make him a super baby face in the eyes of what's going on in the ring. But it just ultimately is the length of time before he gets that hot tag that really kills it for me. It just honestly just felt like forever. And then, like you said, you get the beat down afterwards, and I don't know, it almost felt like Sting just stopped selling at one point as well. And I think that was ultimately my other problem with it, was that Sting's on the deck and you've got two referees that are trying to protect him, but Sting's getting kicked in the side, but he's not moving. And I'm like, do you know what I mean? I'm nitpicking, I suppose, because this is probably one of the better matches on the card. But yeah, like I said, I think just that hot tag really killed it for me.
That's fair. And I won't actually answer that, because I do agree with you. There's a lengthy time that Sting's getting beat down on, and there are rest holds as well. And then people will ask me, well, hang on, you said that the first match it's too long, and Steve said it's too long here. Why do I not think it's too long? Well, my reason for not thinking it's too long is mainly because I think the quality of wrestling is better. That's pretty much it. I think Arn Anderson, Sting, Brian Pillman, stronger in ring at this point in 1995. And I don't think Dallas Page and Johnny B. Bad will take too much offense to that, because they are an opening act, and these are four guys that are probably, if not main events, two of them definitely main event, but they're in and around that area of the card. So they're expected, I think, to put on a higher quality level of match. And of course, that's my reasoning for it. But yeah, this match was the longest match on the show as well. It was at 17 minutes and 9 seconds. So 8 seconds longer than the opener. What would be your star rating for this one?
I'm probably really overly critical. I only went with a 2. I just thought it was just essentially 15 minutes of beating down one guy. And it was like, how much can you kick a man down? Like I said, I think the points it tried to deliver, it did really well, and it got them across. Just ultimately went on for way too long in my eyes.
That's fair. You're gonna hate me though a little bit for my star.
You've gone like 4 stars, didn't you?
No, not that high. Not that high, thankfully. 3.25 though. I was quite.
Dude, I understand it, because everything you said was right. Like, these are 4 really good wrestlers, and like you said, Anderson and Pillman do some great tag team work, and they do a lot of really good stuff to like close off the ring. But I think the problem for me I had as well is that because I knew the swerve that was coming, I can see it in every time Flair gets in the ring that he's not punching Anderson. Like, he's not trying to connect with them, and he's not trying to break up pinfalls. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's what ultimately may ruin it for me, is that I can't say I'd ever seen this match fully all the way through, but I knew the swerve, and I think that's what ultimately kills it for me. Maybe, like I said, if I'd have gone in without knowing that, I probably would have rated this higher. So it's probably my own downfall as to why I don't rate it as high.
That's a fair reflection. Totally a fair reflection indeed. Let's see what Big Dave's got to say. Big Dave has gone with a 3.75 star rating. So Dave really did enjoy this match.
Yeah, like it's understandable. Like I said, this is probably just one of me with one of these matches. Like, I said it. Like I said, it's just a swerve. But then again, I can't really say that because, like, how many times have we done a retro review and I know the swerves are coming? And it was like, I'm kind of being like overly critical of this one particular match, but I don't know. I just think because I know the swerve's coming in, and 15 minutes of beating one guy down for a hot tag that isn't going to build to what the crowd is expecting it to be, I don't know if I'm kind of just underwhelmed by it. Maybe I don't know. It's just weird.
Could it be also the fact that you've probably not enjoyed anything for about an hour and 20 minutes on the show?
No, yeah, possibly. I mean, obviously, because obviously you think if you've really soured on the other 6 or 7 matches, like, I suppose it will kill the buzz for you with this.
I would think that's fair because it's like this was the match that sort of brought me back in because I was sitting there thinking, God, this has been a tough one. Thank goodness we've got Sting, Flair, Anderson, and Pillman on because like I thought myself, I don't know where we go with if there's something different come next. You know what I mean? So they gave me another Zodiac match next. I think we might have not done this review in the end. I think we might have struggled to get it out for you. But at the same time, we don't need to go through the Sumo Monster Truck match because we cover that at the start of the show, which means we can dance over to the next match because Luger said that he would win this. It was Randy Savage versus Lex Luger, and obviously these two. Basically, Luger offering handshake at the start of the match, acting more face of the two, but Savage refuses with a kick. Savage, of course, for context, said before this show, because there was a lot of people who could Hogan trust, and he suggested at the start of before this that Luger, Jimmy Hart, and Sting were all untrustworthy and all possible people to go to the dungeon room. So that's why I think Savage didn't want to shake the hand. He didn't trust Luger, where Luger was showing, well, no, look, I'm still one of the good guys. You can trust me. But still, Jimmy Hart does make his presence known in this match. He comes out in black as well. Heenan is uneasy on commentary with what's happening with the Giant. Of course, we mentioned with the Sumo Monster Truck, which we talked about at the start of the show. Hart gets on the apron, and that stops Luger going for a cheating pinfall. However, then Luger gets thrown into Hart on the apron, which sends Hart down to the ground and also sends Luger down to the ground as maybe connected heads or something. Savage jumps off the top rope, hits his elbow, and picks up the victory. So, at this point, we do get a win then for Macho Man Randy Savage. And just to give a bit of detail of how long this match was, only 5 minutes and 23 seconds. To be honest, I'm sorry for the seconds. I'll drop Silk out just for the minute. But literally, this match for me, it's all about an angle. It's not about the match itself. And I think that's kind of the main issue with it for me. These two are two of the big names that come in. Lex Luger only come back to the company at the first Nitro, which is about 6-7 weeks previous. The fact he's actually, struggling to beat Meng and then losing to Savage in 5 minutes, it's not a good look really for Lex Luger on this show. Was you hoping for more with Savage versus Luger?
Dude, honestly, for the amount of hype that Savage had for both of his entrances, and I get less than 7 minutes of wrestling in a 2.5 hour pay-per-view, I am really disappointed because it's like, I can't remember the last time we watched a Savage match. It might have been when we did a classic match review. I'm sure we did a Steamboat Savage match. I think that's the last time I've seen something. And like I said, you watch a 2 hour, 40-minute show, 7 minutes of Savage wrestling. And like, I know ultimately that Luger has never been booked great anywhere. So, do you know what I mean? I'm just kind of disappointed. Like I said, the fact that both of these have had to go through qualifiers for this point on the card, and again, it's over in 5 minutes. And I think the other problem as well is that the whole atmosphere is just dead from the end of that Monster Truck match because the crowd just don't seem to care. Bobby Heenan just doesn't seem to care. And like he's too busy focusing on the fact that the Giant may be dead. And it's kind of like it just takes away from this moment. And it's kind of like there's no enthusiasm for it. There's no excitement for it, and the fact that again it's over in 5 minutes, it's like, what? Why should I be excited for it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally get it. I mean, the thing is, like, this was a match I remember when I was going through the Nitros and thinking, oh, we might get Savage versus Luger. Really excited for, really thought this was a big deal, thought this could be like a proper #1 contenders match for your next world title scene. And they don't follow through with this at all. Obviously, after this show, we'll talk more about actually the conclusion of because these guys are involved with the fallout of this show. And we'll do that after we talk about the main event because it's kind of all linked together in a way. But yeah, it's not the way I would have gone about it. Obviously, Jimmy Hart is involved with the storyline, like I mentioned before. So it's angle, not match. And I think this one needed to be match. You can always do angle at the last sort of 30 seconds of the match or last minute of the match, but the fact that it kind of feels like the whole point of this for me is just it makes it a bit more disappointing. So I can't give a high rating for this one. What would be your star rating for it?
Dude, I went dud. I thought it sucked. I'm like, well, how am I supposed to enjoy it? Like you said with the last match, how am I supposed to like be excited for a match when I've just watched 3 or 4 absolute piles of crap? And then obviously the tag match is slightly better, but then to go back to a dud match again, I'm like, what's the point?
I will go with a. I'm being generous here. I'm going to give a 1 star just because of the fact that the storyline is a continuation throughout the night. That's the reason why. And I can't give the Savage Elbow a dud because the Savage Elbow is always legendary. But that's me now being completely biased. To be honest. Let's see what Dave Meltz has got to say because it's not pretty. He's gone for a quarter of a star. So yeah. That gives a mean average for Lex Luger to have a minus -3/4 star rating on this show in 2 matches. It's not good.
No, definitely not. And like I said, I think Luger's biggest problem is he's never booked good anywhere really. Like there's always this hope that he'll always get booked really well. Like in WWE, there was the hope he would do well, and he went to WCW, and there was the hope that he would do well, and it just never seemed to come to fruition for him, unfortunately.
No, I think his best run with WCW was probably 97, I'd say. Obviously, if you take away his early part of his career, which I think 91 is probably his highlight point then when he's champion. But yeah, I mean, probably 97. He beats Hogan, I think, before Road Wild, 6 days before. But then he loses the title 6 days later back to Hogan. So yeah, it's and it really built him up at that point as well. But so yeah, it is a bit disappointing. Kind of one of those bridesmaids never the bride moments, I suppose. But hey,
yeah,
what it is, I guess. But that leads us to the main event, which is Hogan, not in the red and yellow, of course, in the black, obviously, representing what the Dungeon of Doom has brought out of him, against the Giant, who does make a miraculous appearance after falling off the side of a building, either onto a roadside or a river.
Brother.
Absolutely. If it was the river, he's dry as well, just to throw out there. There's no wet hair at all, which, to be fair, is a bit disappointing. I don't like to see him come out as Captain Insano, personally, just as a sidetrack.
I love the reference, and yes, it would. Dude, it would have made better sense, kayfabe-wise.
It probably would have done. But one thing that's interesting, I will say, at the start of this match, and Pierre, thanks for your comments, by the way, on this. We will get to them in a couple of seconds. Hogan cowardly gets out of the ring when the Giant gets in. He sort of gets out of the way of the Giant. He's almost fearful of the fact that the Giant survived it. But did you feel that that's the first signs of teasers of what would be the eventual Hogan heel turn? Because Hogan's in the black here, the black and white. Obviously, it's not NWO at this point. But did you feel like that's the first sign of Hogan cowardly backing away from someone?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you could possibly say that this is the first signs of it. I mean, the dude's wearing red cowboy boots, for God's sake. Like, honestly, in what mind is wrestling in cowboy boots the best option as well that he had? Like, his attire just doesn't make sense, especially from the average viewing fan. Like Bobby Heenan tries to explain it best in commentaries, like, oh, he's had to go to that dark place or whatever. And like, yeah, I mean, if we look back at that retrospectively, we probably go, yeah, look, there is signs there that the heel turn is in the works, but I think we're all just we're all too smart to think of it back then because it's kind of like Hogan's just the guy who never turns heel. So
Yeah, absolutely. You would have never imagined it until the day it actually happened. Pierre actually said, by the way, yes, for you, Dungeon Doom, Hogan introduced the NWO Hogan to the Black Gear before the NWO. And just for Ray, yes, the Big Show, Paul White is the Giant indeed. So, yeah, it's the first, and this is actually the first match of his entire career in ring on WCW as a main event on a pay-per-view. So shout out to the Giant for that moment. Which of course he was being billed as Andre the Giant's son as well, which of course is a complete
it's
lie.
true.
But a lot of people believed it back in the day as well, funnily enough, which is quite an interesting note. But going into the match, then, tell you about it then. Hogan versus Giant or Hogan versus Big Show, whichever you prefer. Hogan takes off the black bandana to reveal the Taskmaster-style paint on his forehead, again, foreshadowing another sign that perhaps maybe there could be a heel Hogan in there somewhere. But the Giant uses his strength to get advantage over Hogan, but Hogan, of course, manages to come back, clotheslines the Giant over the top rope to the floor, sending him off his feet for the first time. But the Giant and Taskmaster look to walk away, and that's when Hogan looks to, well, bang the heads together. Well, sort of. Basically, bangs Kevin Sullivan's head into the Giant's chest because, well, Sullivan's quite short in comparison. The Giant then gets back in control, though, with a bear hug and then hits his choke slam. And that's when we see full-on babyface Hogan, who kicks out and hulks up. Hogan makes the usual comeback, slams the Giant as well, really gets the fans involved at this point, wants to see the slam on the Giant. Paul White, and that's when Hogan hits his leg drop. But just before he can go for the pin, Jimmy Hart, who of course also is in black, gets onto the ring apron with the championship. Of course, Hogan is the champion, hits that referee in the back. Therefore, Hogan can't get the pinfall victory. Of course, then Hogan says, like, well, hang on, why is the referee down? Jimmy Hart's like, I don't know. I don't know why he's down. It's a bit weird, isn't it? Go on, you take care of the Giant. And of course, Hogan turns his back. Jimmy Hart hits Hogan at the back with the championship belt, which of course didn't go down too well with Hogan because Hogan had completely no-sold it. But of course, the Giant then has pretty much hits Hogan, gets the advantage of Hogan. That's when we see at this point then Luger and Savage let's try and make the save. Of course, when they get into the ring, fun enough, Luger immediately turns on Randy Savage, and then we get the debut of the Yeti. The Yeti, ladies and gentlemen, just to pretty much show for those who are unaware what the Yeti looks like, he's the front row center of that thumbnail, dressed like a mummy. Oh, what glorious. WrestleCrap 101. So the Yeti was what the Taskmaster, Kevin Sullivan, and the Master claimed would be the insurance policy for the Giant to win the WCW World Championship. The Yeti is taller than the Giant, struggled to walk. He got in while the Giant had this bear hug on Hulk Hogan, looked to combine bear hugs to more or less squash Hogan, but instead it looks more like a cuddle. It looks more like a very, if you were sort of like feeling a bit sad and you think, I need a cuddle, I'd call him the Yeti because the Yeti looks like he's a professional cuddler to me. He is definitely used to a cuddle or two in his time. As this was to continue, though, we do see then obviously Luger puts Hogan in the torture rack, and then on the other side as well, the Giant and the Yeti also give Randy Savage a little bit of a cuddle. Of course, it's the double bear hug, but it's a bit of a cuddle. At this point, then we do see the Giant pose with the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. And of course, the referee does come back round, rings the bell. And of course, it is said from that point that the Giant wins the match, but doesn't win the championship because Hulk Hogan is disqualified because Jimmy Hart hit the referee with the championship belt. So yeah, there might have been lots of cuddles, but there was no celebrations with the championship. This one ends in the DQ, Nick Steve.
This is the most utter pile of garbage I've seen in such a long time. Like, this is so boring. Like, John Cena is famous for his 5 moves of doom. This, I think, had 3 the whole way. And this goes on for like 15 minutes. It was shoulder tackle, clothesline, shoulder tackle, eye rake or back rake. Do you know what I mean? It's the same thing for 15 minutes. It's the biggest pile of garbage. And like you said, the ending where they announce that the Giant has won via DQ. And I'm like, there's no kayfabe to that because the referee doesn't see who hits him or what hits him. So how technically do you know what I mean? How does Hogan get disqualified if the referee doesn't see it? At no point does the ref see who hits him. He knows Jimmy hit like you said, Jimmy hits him with a title. It just doesn't make sense, dude. It's an utter load of pile of garbage. And like I said, without the context of knowing why Luger randomly turns on Savage, it just doesn't make sense. Like this ending just made no sense to me. I had no clue what was going on. I was more confused. I was confused from the minute the bell rang. Really, the fact that the Giant walks in like unaffected, like you said, not even wet. Like he must have landed on like a trampoline or something, because the geezer just looks like he's just ready to go. Like he's unfazed by the fact he's just fallen 5 stories off of a building. Dude, biggest pile of garbage. This is the biggest dud of the night for me. This gets a 0. Like, there's no wrestling to this, because it's Hogan just trying to put himself over again. It's utter garbage.
It's not a good match. It's not a good match. I actually think that the Giant, though, shows some good glimpses. Obviously, the comparisons will be made to Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant. And yeah, that's not something that I would compare. Obviously, Andre was in a very bad way when they had their match. The Giant went up really well for the slam. I think he went for a leg drop, which he missed at one point, and really went high and elevated his body really, really well. He went over the top rope, obviously fell on the floor, but landed on his feet originally. Thought the Giant looked fairly decent in the match. And he would have gone to have some really good moments in his early part of his WCW career, doing drop kicks and stuff like that. But yeah, with a match with Hogan, you're not going to get too much of the good stuff, unfortunately, out of the Giant, because Hogan doesn't wrestle that style. Like you say, he's punch, kick, eye rake. Oh, attack me. I will now sell and make the Hulk up and come back. Punch, punch, kick, leg drop, and we're done. So yeah, I mean, for me, I agree. This match is not on its best standards, but the rest of
the Giant should have known that if Hogan is power slamming him in the first match, he had no chance at all. Because that was the thing. If they're booking him as Andre the Giant's son, and that was the big moment at WrestleMania where Hogan finally slams Andre for the first time ever, and they make a massive deal out of it. If Hogan's doing that to the Giant in his first ever match, Giant's got no chance. Like, he was never going to survive in WCW if that was the booking.
Absolutely. I mean, famously, Paul White said himself actually did the Broken Skull sessions many, many years ago. Watched this interview, and he said that actually it was the Undertaker that I think took him to the side and said, "Look, when he was first in WWE, he's like, dude, you're selling too much. Like, you're a giant. Like, stop selling for everybody. Like, everyone gets to get their moves in. Like, everyone can get to land a power bomb on you, or people get to do this to you, and it's like, you're 7 foot tall. You don't have to do that.
£500, yeah,
you don't have to do that stuff. Just don't do it. And I think that's when you see Big Show, I think, is in his time in WWE, improved himself and improved his stock and everything. He was never as agile as he was in WCW. His most agile was in WCW. That was his probably best time as his, I dare say, fitness as a wrestler, if you want. And that's not to be critical, but obviously he could do drop kicks off the top rope. I mean, name a Giant that could do that. But
he was younger. He was, yeah.
But should a Giant do that, though, as well, is the other question, because he's a Giant. Maybe that's not meant to be in the repertoire for a Giant of how you're supposed to sell the business at that point. I don't know. But these days, in 2024, you love to see a Giant do that off the top rope. When Braun Strowman gets off the top rope, or Bronson Reed up there, we have a great time watching it. So I think it's difference of errors and stuff like that probably goes into that. But to just go on to the other part of this, the finish, I mean, yeah, you're kind of right, but it's wrestle crap. It's the Yeti. I'm going to swear it's fucking awful. But I tell you what, there's a part of it that you just look and go, I'm going to smile to this. I'm a bit happy watching this, because it's so bad that you have to see it. If you haven't seen it, you have to go and see it, just because of the fact you think, what is this mummy doing coming to the ring, walking like this, and then cuddling people when it gets into the ring? I mean, honestly.
And the fact they named him the Yeti, that doesn't even make sense.
Oh.
Like, I'm pretty sure the Yeti is like a creature that lives out in the woods, and they've got him coming wrapped up in toilet paper. What doesn't make sense?
It's brilliant for the wrong reasons.
That's garbage.
It is garbage. It is absolute horseshit. But I'll tell you what, it's certainly it's a talking point for a lot of people, and it's probably why this show still today is remembered purely for it. And do you know the best part about the Yeti? The best part The Yeti, obviously, the following show after this is World War III. 3 rings, 60-man battle royal, 20 man in each ring. The Yeti is the first person of everybody eliminated. And that's the Yeti done and gone from WCW. This was this much of a failure. The Yeti lasted 4 weeks in WCW. It's like the equivalent of saying, whatever happened to Mordecai? It's literally asking that in WWE terms, because literally the guy disappears and comes back as a different person before the end of the year. I think it's Ron Studd, I think is his name when he comes back. I almost
Big
want to
Ron
Google
Studd,
that before we go off air to make sure. Yeah, I think that is it. So I mean, like, yeah, it's absolutely god awful. But Luger does join the Dungeon of Doom. You are correct. Obviously, all those tales of joining up with Sullivan wanting part of the group. I guess he felt to himself, well, Hogan's going to try and stop me getting this championship match. Maybe I've got a better chance being with the Dungeon of Doom and getting the world title. But he never really was associated. He didn't become like the Zodiac or Shark or Kamala or someone with face paint that just seemed really weird. You know what I mean? Like he didn't go back to being the narcissist Lex Luger either. He was just Lex Luger. And it was when we had another really bad match with the Dungeon of Doom against Hogan and Savage in, I think it's like a Tower of Doom steel cage match. It's like 9 people on 2 people or something like, because the Horsemen join them as well. It's a really bad match, but Hogan and Savage end up winning. Luger gets the blame and then gets kicked out of the group, and then he joins Sting, and then he becomes a babyface in 1996. So that's pretty much what goes on. And Luger then goes on to win like 2 or 3 championships at the same time in the year. But yeah, it's it is garbage. It is garbage. And just for Fallout, for people, then what happens next? So I said I would just say that quickly as well. What happens next? The next night on Nitro, people want to proclaim the Giant as WCW World Champion because he won the match in his first match. And it more or less is the thing of like, why can the referee disqualify him? Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so the belt is decided in World War III. Literally is decided that way. And Randy Savage wins. Spoiler alert, if you have not seen it, everyone. Apologies, but it's nearly 30 years ago. Savage wins World War III, becomes WCW World Champion. And you think to yourself, right, okay, cool. So there's basically just to get the belt off of Hogan, this whole angle as well. Typical Hogan, gonna get the belt off of him, doesn't do it clean. No, yeah. Doesn't want to lose clean. Doesn't want to put the new guy over either. So yeah, dud of duds then, is it for you?
Oh, the biggest dud. This is the worst match on the card of the night.
There you go. I am going to have
and bearing in mind, we had matches that were 90 seconds long. This is the biggest pile of garbage.
Oh, do you know what? I'm going to disagree. I hated Luger versus Meng more. I hated that more. I'm going to give this...
Dude, at least they tried putting on a wrestling match. Like, don't get me wrong, the ending's still crap, but like, Giant just takes a 15-minute beatdown from Hogan before losing. And he loses, like, he power slams him.
At least the Giant for me is interesting. Hogan's not interesting. The Giant is interesting. Meng and Luger was not interesting for me. So the Giant is the reason
why. I said to Haku's face that he's not interested.
If you want to be a guest Haku on this show, I will happily share. I did not think the match was that interesting. However, I think you are very interesting as a person. Yeah, I'm going to give this half a star rating just purely because of the fact that I enjoyed the Giant in the match. That's purely the reason why. And because even though it's one of the worst things ever in wrestling history, there was a little bit of a small smile when the Yeti came out. So yeah, for that reason, I'm doing that.
Nope, I was in pain by the end of this because, like, I was just like, I actually forgot to mention this. Actually, you know, you say that now about Luger and Meng. I actually forgot I was falling asleep during that match when I was watching it. It was the only match I was falling asleep to. So, do you know what I mean? I've actually got to admit that as well. It's the only match I was falling asleep to.
I think it's the worst match because I was feeling the same. I was like, Jesus, when does this ever end? Like, it's like, yeah, no, it was really, really bad. That. This match is the third longest match on the show, and it's near the other 2 ones as well. 16 minutes and 57 seconds. Dave Meltzer gives this a 2-star rating.
That's an insulting rating. Anyone with that geezer needs to be sacked, man. I don't know who he thinks he is being a journalist for the last 40 years on professional wrestling, but that is criminal. He should have been sacked after that night.
He did survive another 30 since then, though. So I think he's done all right after that rating. But Anthony, thanks for joining us, mate. Let's go through some comments then, because I can tell you what, Pierre has been having a great time in there. And Anthony's got a couple of comments in there as well. We're going to bring it up on screen. So first off, Pierre says, let me say Dungeon Doom. I always say it's my number one worst wrestling faction ever. Pierre, I think it's certainly a Mount Rushmore topic that could be covered one day, and I think they would be on it.
It's a very good one. Yeah, I mean, dude, without giving some names away, like I can already think of 3 off the top of my head.
I mean, number one there. Pierre, I'm actually going to ask you this one. Dungeon of Doom or Retribution? Which is worse?
Or Oddities.
Oddities. I think they're better than them two. They're better than them two.
Maybe.
Just about. And a Yeti. I've got to say it properly. Yeti. Yeti as well. Did add a convulsion. He certainly did. And what was the idea of having an insurance policy for a world championship match against the world champion of the company to win the championship? Well, there is many times that a challenger has an insurance policy, and usually it works out for them for a lot of the times. But on this occasion, it didn't quite happen.
Yeah.
Pierre, give this match a 10 out of 10. Jokes, it's a 0 out of 10.
You're lying, Pierre.
He's lying. It's a 0 out of 10. He says the overbooking of Cody versus Roman at WrestleMania is better than the overbooking of Hogan versus Giant match. That's an understatement of the evening here. For me, I think Cody versus Roman's awesome. The overbooking, that was perfect.
That's what he says. He says the overbooking of Cody versus Roman is better.
I think it's better. Yeah, but it's not like it's close. It's like it's a golf in
right, yeah.
That's my feeling.
Dude, the problem is Hogan's whole career is overbooked. That's the problem.
That's very true. That's very true. And this is, I think, with Andre, by the time Hogan came into wrestling, Andre was on the back line of his career. He wasn't in his prime. It's a fair comment indeed to make there, Anthony. Yeah. Pierre would suggest that this main event was wrestle crap. He says people forget how truly athletic Big Show is just based on what we're seeing now, with the fact that he's slowing down and he's not as mob as he used to be. I mean, to be fair, he was mobile back in his day, Big Show, and like I say, as a Giant, he was doing good work in WCW. One of my favorite matches, actually, I would say, Giant versus Ric Flair. It's like a random Nitro for the WCW World Title. Not far after this show, it's when the Giant becomes the world champion. And yeah, it's decent. If it's around the turn of the year, definitely worth one to check out. So yeah. Yeti, it's more like a mummy than a Yeti. I would agree with that. It's so beautiful. Apparently, it was supposed to be Giant Gonzalez. Apparently, he was sick. Didn't know that information.
I'd say I never heard it. I had to Google who actually played the Yeti. Do you know what I mean? Because I wonder who it actually is. Was stupid enough to get paid probably a minimal amount of money to dress up in toilet paper.
True story. Anthony asked a good question. Are you guys surprised that WWE hasn't done the Tower of Doom steel cage match? Maybe on NXT, maybe?
Not everything WCW did was a good idea. I'm just going to put it out there.
I really want, we might have to do it at some point next year. I think it's Slamboree, Triple Cage Decker one, and it's the one with David Arquette involved in it as well, defending the WCW World Championship. Maybe just the match will do, because like I don't know, there is a uniqueness and like a wow factor to that steel cage, but at the same time it's like when you do so, I can't think of a good tower steel cage. I mean, they even did War Games as that in the year 2000, and it's not good. I mean, Vince Russo walked away as the WCW World Champion, so that tells you everything. So yeah, not everything WCW did was good. Dungeon of Doom is worse than Retribution. Retribution number 2 for worst faction ever. Fair enough. To be fair, it's probably the right 2 at the bottom, to be fair. And Undisputed Kingdom is number 3. Ouch.
Oh, wow. Jeez. That's harsh. Anna!
But yeah, the Triple K match at Slamboree 2000 is a good match. We may have to go back and watch that. I must admit, I don't remember if it's good or bad, but I remember being like, it's a cool looking structure. I remember Canyon being thrown off the bloody thing anyway, which was certainly a fun moment in that anyway. But we're slightly getting off topic. This was Halloween Havoc 1995. Monster trucks and sumo stuff, and we've got a Yeti as well. Yeah, this was everything it needed to be in a pay-per-view, apart from the wrestling. The wrestling is probably what let this down. But all in all, let's go through our quick little guidelines we go through. First off, OMG moment of the night.
I managed to watch the whole show. That's the kindest you're gonna get out of me. There's not a lot else in this.
Right, OMG moment. I don't think I really thought this through before we got here. So, OMG moment of the night for an actual spot on the show. It's got to be the giant going off the building, doesn't it? It's an OMG moment. Like, he's absolutely right. And the other OMG moment was the Yeti. I mean, to be fair, like, what it should have been a koala, literally. Much better cuddler. Match of the night.
Johnny B. Bad versus DDP for me.
Sting and Ric Flair versus Arn Anderson and Flying Brian for me. Entrance of the night.
Sting. There wasn't many like legendary entrances. I just thought it was nice seeing Stings again.
Yeah, I mean, Sting's got really awesome music as well. So does Luger, to be fair, is awesome music. But Sting is the babyface and Luger is kind of not. So yeah, I'll go with that as well. MVP of the night.
Me, because I watched it.
Oh dear.
I can't not give myself the MVP for sitting through that garbage for nearly 3 hours.
I'm trying to think of a natural answer. I could say myself as well. I could say you as well. But this was your suggestions. I could blame you as well. But
that's true. You can blame me. I can't believe I'm blaming you. I blame myself.
MVP for me, I'm gonna say Sting. He went into a handicap match like with a disadvantage. So, yeah,
that's just actually that's probably the honest answer. The fact that he survives 15 minutes and puts on a good show.
He does indeed. Final rating of Havoc 1995 out of 10.
This is going to be one of the lowest ones ever for me. It gets a 2 out of 10.
Yeah, do you know what? Like I said at the start of this video, for those who are at the start, thanks for watching our way through. For those that have joined us halfway through or joined us at any point, thank you for actually being with us at this. But you may have missed me say this. If you're into storylines and you're into particularly Dungeon of the Doom storylines, this may be a show for you. If you're here for the wrestling, this isn't your show. I do like there are twists and turns. I do like a couple of moments on this on this show. I like a couple of matches on this show. But all in all, giving this above a 4 out of 10, I think it's even possibly generous. I think, though, would be criminal. It's not a good show overall. And that is really sort of saying, like, I'm really pushing the positives because there are a lot of negatives on this show. So, yeah, for that reason, I'm going to go with a 4. The good I really enjoyed, but the rest is quite bad.
Very bad indeed.
So yeah, let's go into a few comments before we wrap things up here today. Let's have a look. MVP of the night, Randy Savage for Pierre from that one. Fair enough. I think that's fair. There, Savage did have 2 matches on the show. Made short work in the first one, but did win 2 matches. Anthony says that was the Yeti gimmick when Bischoff was running creative in WCW, or was that a Vince Russo idiotic idea? Vince Russo was with WWF at that time, still running WWF magazines, so this would have to be given to Eric Bischoff as one of his ideas. Although I must admit, I mean, Kevin Sullivan, I think, was around with the pencil a lot of that period as well. Obviously, with the Dungeon of the Doom would be a lot of his sort of creativeness, I would say.
He looked like a Bambi in headlights the whole night, Kevin Sullivan. Like, he honestly didn't know. Like, he looked like he got to that point in his life where he's like, what am I doing anymore? Do you know what I mean? Like, he was like, I'm a nearly 50-year-old man and I'm still dressing in wrestling onesies and putting silly face paint on, and I'm walking around with a guy wrapped up in toilet paper. Like, I really think he must have really judged his life choices by the end of this show.
I think so. Entrance of the night, Yeti, obviously.
Yeti.
Yeah, has to be indeed. This is not Halloween Havoc with Goldberg showing up in the monster truck. Goldberg doesn't debut to 97, and I think the first one he's in is 98. I would say, if I had to guess off the top of my head, you'll probably think of the year 2000, if I had to guess. Off the top of my head. But yeah. That's pretty much up to date with the comments. Anything final words for yourself before we close off the video?
Don't do it to yourself. Don't go and watch this. It is utter garbage. There is, like I said, controversially, there's like 1, maybe 2 good matches on the whole thing, but don't do it. It's just not worth it.
I'm going to be you're playing the angel, and as it's Halloween, I'm going to play the devil. You should watch it. Put yourself through it. It's wrestling history. Everybody knows this. Everybody talks about it. Put yourself through it, because at least you can say, I have seen it and I know what it's all about. And to be fair, it's WrestleCrap 101. And when people describe WrestleCrap, you can historically pull out and say monster trucks, sumo monster truck match. And also you can say the Yeti as well. The glorious moment where someone can cuddle someone so well instead of giving a bear hug. It is worth it for that alone. But yeah, anyway, on that note, happy Halloween. We might have tricked you rather than treated you on this one. We're not sure, but hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, hit that like button. Certainly, indeed. Hit that like button, share with a friend, subscribe as well. We might be back sooner than you think. Just keep an eye out for the turn notifications on. Might be back soon, you think. And also, just quickly before we do, just as well, Crown Jewel predictions will be on the channel tomorrow live as well. So join us for those. The stream is already up and running, waiting for you to join it. And also, P.S. this is a very last comment. When people discover WrestleCrap, you think Shane McMahon the best in the world? That certainly would be a nice bottom one from the last 5 years, indeed. But take care, enjoy yourselves, and each other. Have yourselves a great day. And yeah, we'll see you for the next SCW Rewind, which will be Survivor Series themed. Look out for the poll dropping later this week.